Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for National NSSLHA's Office Hours, Don't Get Spooked by Grad School Applications. National NSSLHA Office Hours is a live event series designated to bring students and professionals together to talk about topics that are relevant and important to current students. My name is Salvatore Paporto, and I serve as National NSSLHA's Vice President for Programming and Audiology. I am a current AuD student at Montclair State University. I'd like to introduce our moderator for tonight, my Executive Council partner, Rebecca.
Thanks, Sal. My name is Rebecca Willer, and I serve as National NSSLHA's Vice President for Programming in Speech-Language Pathology. I'm a current Speech-Language Pathology graduate student at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I'll be monitoring any questions you ask throughout the night, which can be done through the Q&A box.
Thanks, Rebecca. So before we get started, we would like to take a few minutes to thank our sponsor, the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences, for the support of this event. I'd like to invite Ms. Rebecca Thomason from the University of St. Augustine to share a few words.
Thank you, Sal. The University of St. Augustine is proud to sponsor today's live webinar discussion. We understand the importance of a graduate level education to accomplish your future professional goals. Next slide, please. The University of St. Augustine is a graduate health science university which offers the Masters of Science in SLP. We have been committed to the health science community for over 40 years. The university's focus is to develop professional healthcare practitioners through innovative, individualized, and quality education. Next slide, please. Just want to share with you a few reasons why individuals select our university for their graduate program. We're known as a leader in the health science education community. We also provide the interprofessional education opportunities with fellow OT and PT graduate students. We have core faculty members on the Austin and Dallas campus, as well as contributing faculty across the U.S. We are known for the use of our technology and innovation. So for example, this past summer, we developed a couple of pro bono clinics so students could gain teletherapy experiences and the technology that's used during the day-to-day curriculum instruction and in clinical simulation labs. It's very, very exciting. Next slide, please. The SL program overall is an accelerated program at the university. It's a year and 8 months to complete your graduate level work. It's broken into 5 trimesters, and each trimester is 15 weeks long. Our program has 3 main components. The first is the quality online academic instruction with your faculty as well as your cohort. The second component is where we provide on-campus residency experiences 4 times a year, or 4 times in the year and 8 months, you're going to be traveling to one of the campuses for the on-campus residency experience. The third component is an internal clinical education team that manages the clinical externship experiences. The next slide, please. So here's our contact information for additional questions you may have about the University of St. Augustine. We have 5 campuses across the U.S. in Florida, Texas, and California. Currently, we offer the SLP program on the Austin and Dallas campuses. On behalf of the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences, we wish you the best as you begin your research or graduate programs and completing those CCC-A applications. I look forward to today's discussion with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomason. At National NSSLHA, we understand that applying to graduate school is a rewarding yet long and tedious process. The different application websites, personal statements, transcript requests, and interviews always prove to keep applicants busy for the academic year. The current state of the world due to COVID-19 makes this task increasingly difficult for current undergraduate seniors. Because of this, National NSSLHA wanted to offer a way for students in the application process to seek advice from professionals and other students who have firsthand experience in the graduate admissions process. Tonight's office hours is a 2-part event where we will first hear from 2 students in SLP graduate programs and one AuD student about their experiences applying to graduate school. Then we will hear from 4 CSD related professionals with experience on the admissions side of the grad application process. Although we have developed questions for panelists, this event is meant to be an open discussion, so please ask questions via the Q&A feature. You can also feel free to add comments via the chat. We're fortunate to have a panel of students and professionals who took time out of their busy schedules to help us all transition to this unique fall semester. And with that, I would like to introduce our student panelists, Annie Hinker, Daniella Shimoonov, and Katie McGovern. If you could please introduce yourselves and include your discipline and your university. So let's start with Annie Hinker.
Hi everyone, I'm Annie Hinker and I am a first year SLP student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Thanks so much, Annie. And now Daniella.
Hi everyone, I'm Daniella. I'm a first year SLP grad student as well, and I'm also really excited to help you guys out today with any questions you have.
Amazing, thanks Daniella. And now Katie.
Hi everyone, I'm Katie. I am a second year audiology student at Salus University.
Great, thanks so much, Katie. So now let's get started. So as I said before, we have general questions for the applicants or the panelists already made, but if you as the audience have any questions that you would like asked, please feel free to just drop it in the Q&A feature or the chat box. So for the first question, I'm going to direct this actually towards all three because this kind of is a good general question for all graduate school applicants. Since the application process is so long, where do you think is the best place to start with GREs or transcript requests or letters of rec? So I'll direct it towards, let's start with Annie.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I know when I was first getting started with my grad school applications, it just, like you said, it feels super overwhelming and it's really hard to know where to start. And I know for me personally, I took the GRE and studied for it over like the summer before my senior year of undergrad. And just for clarification, I went straight from undergrad to grad school. So I was doing those applications while I was finishing up my undergrad. And so I started with the GRE, and then right around this time I was asking for letters of recommendation from professors, and really getting a rough draft of personal statements going and bringing them into the writing center on our campus, asking parents and friends to reread them. So yeah, that was definitely how I started. I don't know if you guys had a different experience that you want to share.
I more or less did the same. I actually just sat down and kind of made a list of all the schools that I was applying to, and what each school required, if they had any different requirements that I had to specifically take a look at. And I decided to take the GRE the summer before I started grad school. Before I started my last year of undergrad. Wow, I'm already like in the grad school moment. And then afterwards, beginning of fall semester, I started asking for letters of recommendation, and I very carefully approached my professors after class or before class and kind of just gave them an understanding of how many programs I was applying to and kind of just like what I really need from them, because like you really need to tell them by when you need these things, because they also need their deadlines, because some professors are all over the place just like we are as students.
I pretty much agree with everything they said. One thing I did do a little differently is I get very bad test anxiety, and I'm not a very good test taker. So I kind of took that chunk and put that ahead of everything else. I did my studying, I took my test, and once I got that grade, I stopped worrying about it altogether. When I got that grade I wanted to get, and I felt like that was the best I was going to be able to do, then I focused on my letters, I focused on my applications and my essays, and I think that really helped me, knowing that I had one thing completely done.
Great, thank you all for that. That was some really solid advice. Thank you. And we are actually getting some amazing questions from the audience. So Rebecca, do you have any specific questions from the audience for our panelists?
I have so many. So one question that I got that I thought was really great to start with is, CCC-A is kind of a confusing site. Is there any advice on how to use it?
Yeah, I totally agree with that statement. I think it's really nice to have CCC-A there as a resource to have all of your information stuff in one place, but it can be very daunting to be starting your applications and be like, oh my gosh, there's this huge crazy website where I have to submit all of this stuff. And honestly, probably the most helpful suggestion I have for you guys is to rely on your classmates who are also applying at the same time as you. between troubleshooting with each other, checking in with professors, and relaying that information to each other, that was how I got through the CSDCAS application process for sure. And also, CSDCAS is super responsive when you have specific questions. I know that like I was down at the crunch line and I don't even remember like exactly what my problem was at the time, but like I was emailing back and forth with them like 2 days before Christmas and they were getting back to me. So the people at CSDCAS are wonderful also. So don't be afraid to reach out to them as well.
I'm going to second that. They're so responsive, even by phone. I can't tell you how many mornings I've spent calling them and like just double checking like, oh, okay, did you guys get this? Or do I need to send this by this time? Will my universities get this on time? And like, they were really good about giving me a good idea of like how long it would take for me to send everything and for it to get processed, to make sure that the universities would actually get them on time for deadline. And yeah, just don't be scared to ask questions, guys. Like in general, that's like my favorite thing, my best form of advice. Ask everyone questions, because that's the only way you can get an answer. Because if you don't ask, you won't get any answers. So CSDCAS is always open to any questions.
I really don't have anything to add. I called CSDCAS a billion and one times because just like they said. So any questions you may have, you can Google it, you can ask a friend, but I always say it's best to go right to the source. So I 100% agree.
Thank you, guys. Another question from the audience is, how do you suggest asking for letters of recommendation, considering students might be distant learning, or a lot of students have just virtual education right now? So how do you recommend asking for letters of recommendation right now?
Can I start this one?
Yes, that'd be great.
Okay, so basically, I know it's really hard right now with the current situation to kind of get to know your professors, and some of you are only like possibly taking your first semester of speech classes because you're post-bac or something else, because I know I've had friends in those situations, and really just kind of be very involved in class. Your professors, whether they see you on Zoom or they don't see you on Zoom, or if you send them emails constantly asking questions, they see how important and like how important everything is for you, and they get to know you as a person that way as well. Just don't be afraid to approach the professors. Professors will let you know if they really don't have time or don't want to write you a letter of recommendation. I've had professors tell me, I don't know you well enough to give you a letter of recommendation. And I was like, thank you for your honest opinion. Thank you for your honest, like, just thank you for letting me know. That means I know to go to someone else who I know might not have the time, but does know me better and feels more confident in giving me that recommendation. So, yeah.
Thank you, Daniella. Katie or Annie, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of all all professors everywhere. So I know we have some professors who are coming on later tonight to talk also, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I know a lot of professors at my undergrad university, which was also UW-Madison, said that they actually preferred to get an email as opposed just like requesting a letter of rec, as opposed to having a student like set up an appointment and then taking time out of their schedule for a student to just come in and be like, hey, can you write me a letter of rec? So that's my 2 cents. I thought that was kind of interesting because I definitely thought that I should be like putting forth that effort to go in and make an appointment with them, but they actually said that they would prefer an email. And then usually what they would do is they would confirm that they'll write your letter of rec over email. And then if they needed more information from you, then they'd say, hey, why don't we set up a time in a few days, few weeks, few months, so you can come in and talk to me and we can figure out where you're at with grad school apps and everything.
They pretty much covered it for me.
Thank you, Katie. Another question I'm getting a lot in the chat is, how many programs would you recommend applying for, both SLP and audiology?
So I went through the application process twice. I put all the schools I really wanted in the first one. I was on the fence about taking a gap year and I ended up taking a gap year. So I would say, realistically, there's no right or wrong number. If it's a school that you would consider going to and you would be like happy, you think you'd be happy there, you'd be able to do it, I say apply to it. If it's in your distance area, whatever you're putting your criteria to pick your schools, I would say if it's something that you're considering that you would say, if I got in here, I would definitely consider going. I would say it's a safe bet to apply to there.
I agree with Katie 100%. I personally, I think, applied to 7 or 8 programs, 2 of which I regret applying to because I really didn't like the programs. But I was like in the whole moment of, oh my God, applications, I need to apply to as many programs as possible, which I know everyone experiences at some point. But it was the dumbest thing for me because, I learned through the application process that I need to have confidence in myself. And I'm telling all of you guys to just believe in yourself. I know that's like, everyone says that, but I'm not kidding. You have to really just take a breather, relax and think, okay, what do I really want with my life? What do I want with my future? There are some programs where, they specialize in certain things. Other programs that they have like special opportunities for you guys, like research assistantships, graduate fellowships, et cetera, et cetera. So you just kind of have to look at what really brings you to that school. I know one of the things I personally really liked about my program, and I went to my program for both undergrad and currently in grad, they had an early intervention specialization. I know that early intervention is not so huge as of yet with new students going into the field, and that we're not taught so much as undergrads or as grad students personally about the specific population. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity for me to learn about this population, whether I can do something that's pretty new to the field. And I'm so glad I'm doing the early intervention specialization along with my regular general classes. And it is a little bit harder, but nothing good comes easy. So, just apply to as many as you feel is right. I don't think that you need to apply to 20 programs. Guys, it's a lot of money to go to grad school. Save that money. Save it.
Yeah, I just echo everything that you guys are saying. I personally applied to 6 schools and I thought that was just fine, but like you're saying, Daniela, I had a friend who applied to 20 programs and she got into 19 out of the 20 and she's like, what did I do that for? So yeah, just apply to however many. I think the best piece of advice I got is that apply to however many you need to apply to in order to be comfortable in between that time when you submit your applications and you hear back from schools. Where if you know that you're a super anxious person and you are going to be super nervous if you only applied to your reach schools while you're waiting to hear, then apply to some safety schools. But if you feel pretty confident in your application, then just apply to those 3 or 4 top schools that you really want to go to.
Such great advice. Thank you, guys. This question is specifically for Katie. So a student was wondering, it's their second time applying to grad schools. Do you have any advice on re-asking professors for letters of recommendation, especially because so much time has passed since this individual has had classes with them? So that second go around, any advice for that?
Yes, so my biggest recommendation for this would be, if you're going to ask one of your professors that you haven't had in a while, obviously it's somebody that you had a connection with enough that you feel you're able to ask now. So when I went and emailed my professor the second time around, I attached my resume. I attached a picture of myself. And I also wrote a little blurb about something that she would remember me by from the class. And then I went into applying to grad school again. I would really love it if you'd write a letter of recommendation for me. And she responded with, I know exactly who you are. Thank you for sending the pictures. I have had so many students. Sometimes the faces get lost in the crowd. Thank you for sending me your resume. I was going to ask you for that anyway. So doing those little things that you're giving them, like, here's who I am. Here's what I've done. Here's how you might remember me. That will make a difference than just emailing a professor and being like, hi, I was your student a year ago. Hopefully you remember me, and kind of giving them reasons to remember you, showing them that you care enough that you want to make sure that they remember you, that they will write an honest, good letter on your behalf. That made all the difference for me the second time around, even from the first, when I was I was still in undergrad applying to schools. And some of my teachers are like, I had you 2 years ago. I don't really remember you. So I definitely learned that from the first time around, and it made all the difference in the world, and getting my letters were so much easier.
Thank you so much, Katie. And a few students are also asking about shadowing opportunities because due to COVID, they aren't able to complete shadowing opportunities in person. So what are some ways that they can get more exposure to the fields of speech language pathology and audiology, or what are some recommendations you have for that?
I'll personally just say that as an undergrad, I didn't actually shadow a single SLP. I didn't have that opportunity. I know a lot of my peers did. They were working in SLP offices as secretaries or in audiology offices. And I'm like, I don't have those connections. Every SLP I contact does not want to let me shadow him or her. And I was stressing out, and I was like, you know what? Whatever, I have my other experiences that'll bring me out there. I did a lot of research as an undergrad, so that was really good. I know that a lot of professors are still trying to get research done over Zoom, so maybe you can contact your professors or your department and just kind of see if there's anything available, and keep looking outside your schools, because there's so many opportunities outside that you only find out if you start looking. So yeah, I'm sorry that wasn't so helpful with where to look specifically, but yeah.
Yeah, I know, just as like a first year grad student, all I can say is that we have been doing so much online therapy through teletherapy. And I know a lot of SLPs and AUDs are doing the same thing. So if there was someone that you had in mind that you wanted to shadow, don't be afraid to reach out to them, just because we're living in these COVID times right now. Because I mean, I obviously can't say for sure with every SLP or AUD, but there's a chance that they say like, hey, you can hop into our WebEx session or our Zoom session or something like that. So I'd just say, like, speech therapy and audiology therapy is still happening. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask.
Yeah, and what they said, it is just a matter of finding that place that's going to let you do it the way you need to be doing it right now. But I wanted to bounce off of Daniella's point about not having like the undergrad experience with like working in the field and stuff like that. Even in my gap year, I continued to work at a daycare that I had been working through all of undergrad, currently still work there. So I never had that speech internship or that audiology internship. And having that difference in my background has made me so much more open to all the things. Audiology has 1,000,000,001 fields that you can go into, little specialties, and not having those undergrad experiences has really helped me stay a little more open than some of my classmates to all the possibilities of where my career might go. And quite honestly, it has made me enjoy my time in all my different classes and subjects now, that I'm so glad I didn't stress about finding those internships. Not saying they're not great. They are great. They are great to have. But if you cannot find them, do not stress, because it is not the end of the world.
I'm just going to say that I worked at a law office throughout undergrad, guys. I had people in the law office, all our clients come out to be like, you're not studying to become a lawyer? I was like, no, I'm studying speech pathology. And they're like, what a shame. And I'm like, I'm not really. I'm like, I'm not interested in this field, but I needed a job. You guys, if you need a job, just go for the job. And you'll learn a lot from having the opportunity to work in different areas, because, you never know when you're going to actually have to work with people within those fields, because, you work with all the medical professions, but we never think about working with like lawyers, anybody else. But things do happen in life. You will have to end up working with other people from outside the medical field and outside the education field. So, just keep your mind really open to opportunities that you can find. Just grab it.
I really love that advice, Daniella. I second that. What is one thing you wish you knew before applying to graduate school? Let's start with Katie.
Bouncing right back to my point that I just made, I wish I did not stress out about not having those undergrad internships as much as I did, because I always panicked. I wasn't able to find one. I wasn't able to find one in my gap year, but everything ends up okay. As well as I wish I had researched my schools. I knew where I was applying. I knew what I was getting into, but I wish I had really reached out to more people at the school to try and get student opinions about the schools. The school I'm at now, I was put in touch with one of the older students in the program, and I'm so glad I was, because she made me so much more excited to go to my interview, to go through the application process, to do all that stuff. That's very nerve-wracking. Otherwise, I was so excited because I knew the school that I was going to was the one I wanted to be at. So definitely, if you're able to, see if you're in the schools, if their enrollment offices have any type of ambassadors or student liaisons that you can get in touch with, just to ask questions and pick their brain about different things and what to expect.
Annie?
Yeah, so just to kind of go off the first part of Katie's answer is, I think if I could go back and tell myself 1 year ago anything, it would be that no one has the perfect application. I mean, maybe some people do, but not many people do, where I definitely stressed so much because I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't do an undergrad thesis, I didn't do X, Y, and Z, and I was comparing myself to all these people who had. But I think what you need to realize is that everyone brings something different to the table, and you need to focus on what those things are on your application, and really focus on talking about those things and relating those things to why you're going to be a great audiologist or SLP. And don't stress too much about the things that you don't have, because we're all human and you only have time for so much in your undergrad while being a sane, well-balanced human being. So don't stress is my main point.
I really agree with that. Don't stress. I wish that I didn't listen to other people when I was applying to grad school. I had so many people, I had joined some Facebook groups from SLP grad students and like senior undergrads, where I had asked a couple questions, and people are like, oh yeah, if you don't have a 4.0 GPA or anything above a 3.7, you're never going to get into grad school. Or if you have lower than a whatever on your GRE, you're never going to get into grad school. And I was like, what about my experiences? They don't count for anything. And I was really starting to doubt myself. And by the time I hit interviews, and I was shocked that I got an interview because of all this doubt that I was putting on myself because of what people were telling me, I couldn't believe half the things that that were going on at the time. And I was learning right then and there during my interviews that, I have to show who I am, and I have to breathe. Because if I don't breathe, then, maybe I really am going to screw this up. And that's not what I want. I want to get somewhere with my life. I want to make a difference. So guys, don't listen to other people. I mean, I don't listen to other people, but don't listen to other people. So you should know what to listen to. If they're telling you that you're less than, or you're not going to get in or whatever, don't listen to them. But if they're giving you useful information about how to apply, or how to do things the right way, or how to double check things, or they're giving you reminders, listen to them. But just make sure that you do your own research, that you look at everything yourself. But you have to just kind of sit down and think and be like, okay, this is what I'm looking to do now. Let's see where I can go from here. So just don't stress. Very, very heavily stressing this. Don't stress.
Thank you, guys. These are all such great tips. I'm seeing a lot of questions about personal statements and essays, specifically how to talk about strengths in personal statements. What if you're applying to more than one school? Do you do one then the others? Do you write them all at the same time? What are your best tips and advice for personal statements and essays?
Yeah, I can get started with this one. I think my number one tip is to start early with your personal statements in your essays and everything. I know that most schools, it's only a page and a half, so I can see how it would be super easy to be that's 1,500 words. That's no big deal. I can write that in a Saturday afternoon. But this is a super, super, super important essay, as I'm sure all of you do know. But just give yourself that time to write it, and then show it to people and have people edit it and get feedback from people. And then as the semester goes on and you hear more about the grad school application, change, like make little edits here and there. So just start early. And also in terms of talking about your strengths on grad school applications, one really good piece of advice that I got is to make sure that you have concrete examples of how your experiences in undergrad back up those personal strengths. So for example, don't just say, I'm a great leader. Say, I have great leadership experience because I've done X, Y, and Z in grad school. And probably my third piece of advice is what one of my professors told me when I first gave her like my first draft of my personal statement. She was like, you're trying to say too much in here. Like this is overwhelming. Like people don't want to read this much. This is confusing. And I also like don't understand what you did for this experience. So you need to choose like 4 of these things and hone in on those experiences and talk about those things. So don't try and do too much in your personal statements.
I also just want to add to that. Guys, it'd be really, really smart if you actually look over your CV, your resume first, and you basically just kind of fix that up first and see what have you done over the last 4 years of your life. What do you want to highlight? What experiences in your life that aren't necessarily written on your resume do you want to discuss to show within your essays that, you know, like, oh, look, this is me, this is who I am, I'm not going to change, but I'm going to learn from my experiences and I'm only going to change for the better. That helped me a lot when I was writing my letters of rec. My essays. I'm so tired already, guys. Sorry. It's been a long day. But yeah, so like when I was writing my essays, also keep in mind to look at what each program requires you to write. Some programs will be like, oh, just write a personal statement about yourself. Others will ask you a specific question. I had, I think I had to write 4 different kinds of essays for the 7 or 8 programs that I had applied to. Some of them I wrote more or less the same thing, but I would change certain parts of the essay to kind of reflect on what I liked about the school themselves and why I was specifically applying to that school. Others were more of just, you know, answering the question and try to answer the question. And I really do agree with Annie about not adding too much. My research mentor was like, oh my God, what is this? The first time she saw my draft. And I was like, what do you mean, professor? And she's like, okay, you don't need this. You don't need this. This is written in your CV. It doesn't need to be repeated. You know, like, yeah, you might have done a lot or you might have done almost nothing, but, you know, you want to really reflect on what really makes you you and what makes you stand out. I know that like I had a personal experience why I was going into this field, and I knew that for me that was very important for me to highlight to the people who were looking over my essays and looking over my application, because I wanted to just explain that I'm not doing this just for, you know, the heck of it because I thought it was a cool field. Like I'm doing it because it really does mean something to me. And I think that showed in my essay. I do agree also to show a lot of your friends. My best friend, which is so ironic, she and I were both studying for speech. She was in a different school that didn't have speech. And so she would always have she would always ask me questions about like, you know, how do we do this? How do we do this in the sense? So it was really good for me to have her there with me in the application process. And she would send me and I would send her my stuff and we'd look it over and, you know, we'd give each other our pointers or advice on what could be fixed in our essays. So, you know, don't feel shy about showing people what you're working on. Obviously just ask people who you're most comfortable and who you're most comfortable with and who you really, really trust. Because the people who know you best and who you trust will be the ones who honestly tell you whether your essay is full of fluff or if it's something really, really worthwhile to continue reading. And keep a lookout on the word limit, guys. Very important.
So
Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No.
Real quick. No, I just want to say real quick. I agree with all of them. Just you really do want to sell yourself. So, you know, do whatever, obviously with all those other advice, keep it short, keep it concise, but make sure you are selling yourself because you are the best thing you have to offer to these grad schools. So show them why and make them want you and make them fight for you.
Thank you so much to all to everyone, to all three of the speakers. You guys gave some really great advice. And as someone who went through the graduate application process, I can tell you that you guys really spoke to how I was feeling during that time. So once again, thank you guys so much. So now we are going to be moving on and switching gears so that we can hear from our four professionals who can answer questions from the admissions perspective. Now I'd like to bring in Dr. Joanne Kasha, Ms. Karen Jacobs, Ms. Rebecca Thomason, and Dr. Yula Serpanos. If you could please introduce yourselves. So first we'll start with Dr. Joanne Kasha.
Hi, I'm Dr. Kasha. I am a professor and the co-coordinator of the SLP graduate program at Kane University in Union, New Jersey. And I'm also the chair of the CSDCAS recruitment committee.
Thank you. And now for Ms. Jacobs.
Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Jacobs. I'm the Vice President for Account Management at Liaison, and I'm the Account Manager for CSDCAS, and I'm also a former Health Professions Admissions Director. Thanks for having me.
Great, thank you. And now for Ms. Thomason.
Hello again, I'm Rebecca Thomason, the Associate Enrollment Advisor on the Austin, Texas campus with the University of St. Augustine. I get the privilege of meeting with applicants in various stages of their application process to discuss the university or the program or even just admissions requirements. So it's a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Dr. Serpanos.
Hi, everyone. I'm Yula Serpanos. I'm a professor at Adelphi University, a professor of audiology. I'm also the program coordinator of the Long Island Doctor of Audiology Consortium of 3 universities, Adelphi, Hofstra, and St. John's. And it's a pleasure to be speaking to all the future applicants out there.
Thank you so much. So now we are going to be running a Q&A portion similar to what we just did for the student portion. So just like before, if you have any questions, please feel free to utilize the Q&A feature or the chat box. So for the first question, what specifically is something that could make a student's application stand out during the graduate admission process? So first, I'm going to direct it towards Dr. Serpanos.
So certainly, I know that a lot of the students have already discussed some of these things. Clinical experiences, I think, especially in audiology, I know they're very limitedly given in many undergraduate programs. So any student that tries to obtain some extra experience or some experience is very helpful. And of course, now we're in COVID times, so this is difficult. And it's not a deal breaker, as some students have mentioned, definitely not a deal breaker. So applicants out there, yes, you should just feel confident in any clinical experience that you're able to obtain. And, you know, it shouldn't be a deal breaker, at least not in our program. But if you can speak to some sort of a clinical experience, that's terrific. And leadership opportunities are wonderful. Being involved in professional organizations, you don't have to be a leader, but being a member of NSLHA, for example, is terrific. It's a wonderful thing to do. It shows involvement and professionalism, you know, being involved in your professional organizations. And any other thing that you're involved in, such as research, perhaps. Maybe you've done a publication with a faculty member or a presentation. These are all strengths. Any volunteer activities you've done, all of these are strengths. So again, as was mentioned earlier, from the student panelists, build yourself up and just bring forward the great things that you have done.
Thank you, Dr. Serpanos. So next, I'm going to refer the question to Ms. Thomason now.
Thank you, Sal. Yes, I'd like to just add to that. Definitely the shadowing and the observation hours are really important. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of an online resource called Master Clinician Network that gives you an opportunity to gain those hours right now during COVID and the state of our world. That's a really good resource for you to make sure that you're getting those kind of hours. I know here at the university we require 25 observation hours. So we do have resources available for you if you're not able to go physically in person to gain those hours. The other thing is just the prioritization priority on your writing skills. You know, as SLPs, you will be doing a lot of writing in your profession, so we really look closely at your personal essays that you're writing, as well as the writing portion on your GRE exam. So those are just a couple additional items I wanted to mention today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's very useful on the admissions perspective of applying to graduate school. Rebecca, are there any good questions from the audience?
Oh, definitely. One question a lot of students are asking is, do all letters of recommendation have to come from professors?
I can answer that. We're not looking necessarily that they come from professors, but it's a definite strength to have the letter from someone in the field, a clinical supervisor, someone that you worked with in the field, whether you've done research with that person, maybe not your direct professor, but I really think it's a big strength to have the letter from somebody in the profession.
I would agree with that if I could jump in. I think for sure someone in the field. We usually recommend to our undergrad students that if they need to supply 3 letters of recommendations, that at least one be from a professor if possible. We're looking for someone who can attest to your ability to be a successful graduate student. So a professor at the undergrad level is going to be able to attest to that, but a professional in the field might be able to to speak to your ethical skills, your professional skills, and other things that will equally make you successful in graduate school.
Great, thank you so much. So one question that I'm seeing from the audience, due to COVID, some programs are asking for a resume in replacement of an interview. How do you recommend that someone craft a resume, professional work, resume, or academic focus? Would it be more for professional or academic?
I would say, both. One of the students mentioned earlier, I forget who, I apologize, but it was a great point. Any work opportunity, any work experience, that shows initiative, it shows maturity, and it shows being able to work with others. So any employment opportunity on the resume, even if it's not directly related to the field, gives an indication of other qualities in the student. Certainly the professional parts of the resume, what you've done academically, what you've done clinically, anything related to the field is certainly important, but those other sorts of things that are not directly related also speak to your other characteristics.
Yeah, I don't think I would limit it to one or the other. I don't think I would say it must be more educationally based or must be more professionally based. I think a combination of the two is really what an admissions committee is looking for, a balance.
I would also add too that for those of you who've never done a resume before, might have a challenge in trying to pull all of those things together. I think Daniella had mentioned it before. In the CCC-A application itself, there is a section called experiences, and it actually breaks everything down. So it's really helpful for you to be able to go through that process and list all of these different things. It pulls out all of the information related to where you did this, how many hours, who was your supervisor, and that helps you then have all of that information right there and lets you build that resume afterwards. So that's also a really useful tool as well.
Great, thank you so much. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca again for another audience question.
A lot of students are asking how to best prepare for interviews. This could be a professional question. If students wanted to chime in from their point of view too, I'll throw it out to everyone.
I would say do your homework before you go on the interview. Learn as much as you can about the school from their website or maybe from other students if you have the opportunity to speak with them. Know what the school is known for. Do they have a clinic? What does their clinic do? What types of populations do they serve? What is the research that their faculty are doing? I would make myself very familiar with those things in order to prepare for the interview.
And I would add that I would also be prepared for the types of questions that might be asked. And generally, you know, the questions, they're not exactly the same at all the places, certainly, but in terms of categories, they're the same. So you might be asked about, you know, personal questions about you, about your strengths, about your weaknesses. You might be asked to provide your experiences, clinical experiences. You might be asked knowledge-based questions. So just being prepared for different categories and types of questions, I think always helps.
Rebecca, I would also like to add that, you know, the interview is also a two-way kind of communication. So also make sure that this interview, you're asking questions to make sure the university and the program is the best fit for you as well. So just make sure that this is your time to ask questions because this is your time and your energy and investment. So I just wanted to also mention that to the applicants as well tonight. Thank you.
I would agree with that 100%. Our university does in-person interviews, and we have found that the applicants are interviewing us as much as we are interviewing them. So definitely come with your questions. Be ready to ask questions of the faculty as well as the other students that are there, because it's your opportunity to really network and talk to other students too.
And one other thing to note on that as well is just to kind of be prepared for virtual interviews. You know, we're being really creative in this COVID world that we live in. And so a lot of the interviews are being conducted on this type of platform. So it also gives you a chance to present yourself virtually, but kind of prepare yourself as well. It's a little different format for applicants, but just keep in mind there's also that virtual interview to prepare for.
Great, thank you so much for everyone. So another question that we are seeing, we're seeing some questions regarding transcripts. So in experience with getting applications, is it best to send in a transcript immediately during the application process, or should a student possibly wait until the fall semester has ended to send in their transcript, or do you recommend sending in both?
I know personally that it is very helpful when we review applicants to see as much of the grades of the courses, the relevant courses as possible. So sometimes they're not, the grades aren't always there if they're taken, let's say in the fall semester and you're applying in the spring. So I would say within reason, of course, knowing the timing of when the applications are due, and you know, if it's timed well enough and you can get the last possible moment of submitting the transcript when the final grades have been submitted, that would be great.
I would also just add to that if you are sending your transcript in earlier than before the semester is completed, so if you were to send it in like now and your fall grades are not in and you still have the spring semester to take courses, please, 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 in that CSDCAS application, put in the courses that are in progress or the courses that you are registered for the spring. It's so important for us to know what you're going to be taking so that we know whether you have the prerequisites completed or not. If students don't fill in what's in progress on that the electronic transcript within the CSDCAS application, Karen, maybe you could talk some more about that piece of it. But we look to that immediately to see if they have, if an applicant has all of their prereqs done. And you might be finishing those up in the spring. So if you don't fill that in, we wouldn't know that.
That's a really good point. There is that opportunity for you to be able to put not just the coursework that you've already earned, but that is in progress. The other thing too that I don't know if folks know about within CSDCAS is that if you did submit your application, for example, now, before you had these fall courses completed, your application could go through the verification process at this point. We give you actually another opportunity. It's called Academic Update. That's between December 15th and February 15th. So if you then went and submitted another transcript for that coursework that you just completed in the fall, we'd go back and verify it a second time with that new coursework so that your faculty could get that updated information and use that new information in their evaluation.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. So I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca for another audience question, if we have anyone's.
Oh, we definitely do. Some students are asking about thoughts on a gap year, pros and cons. Do you suggest taking a gap year?
If we could refer, maybe like this question could apply to everyone, but let's start with Ms. Thomason, if possible.
So gap year, yes, we do see that, but during that time, we want to look to see what you've been doing with your education and what are you doing to prepare for your next step. So how does that fit in your timeline, and how's that going to fit to your overall outcome goal? And that's kind of what we want to see demonstrated during that gap year.
Great, thank you so much for that. And let me go towards the section and look for another audience question.
Sal, I know there was also a question earlier about the GRE. I know there were some questions on whether or not you can take that right now during COVID. I just wanted to mention to the audience that the ProctorU is actually offering the GRE virtually. So if you're not able to find a testing site, there is information out there where you can sign up through ProctorU to take the GRE virtually. I just wanted to mention that to everyone before we end the call today too.
Yes, definitely. I was going to actually, that you read my mind. The next question was going to be about the GRE. Someone asked, since there are many schools are either waiving the requirement for the GRE scores or the format of the test is now changing, are there any recommendations for how to go about preparing for it or prioritizing it in your graduate application process?
So with that question, I would just say, research the institution that you're looking at, see if it's still a requirement. Some institutions are waiving that at this time, but if you find that the university you're applying to does require it, again, if there's limited testing sites available, then definitely reach out to ProctorU. They are still conducting that test virtually, and you can set up a schedule of when you'll be able to take that. Their hours to take the test are really flexible right now, as far as weekends and in the evening. So just something to keep in mind for future applicants.
Great, thank you. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca again for another audience question.
So we've talked a lot tonight about how students can stand out in a positive way, but a few students are asking, are there any common pitfalls or things that students might put on an application that makes them stand out in a negative way, things to avoid in an application?
Yeah, I think definitely spelling, grammar, typos, double check everything. That will definitely make you stand out in a way that you probably don't want to. Another thing that we've come across in the past is a student might upload a resume and have like a personal statement in their resume that's directed toward a different university. So they may have a different university name on some of their paperwork because they're applying to multiple schools. So we understand it gets confusing, but I would say just double check everything with making sure you have the correct name of the university, making sure that the people who are writing your recommendation letters are aware that you're applying to multiple universities too, so that the recommendation letter isn't specific to one university, and double check for spelling and typos and things like that, grammar. Have someone read it.
I would also add that process is important. And I know that when I used to do this at the health professions admissions, we did actually have a part of our process to identify whether students were following the process that we had laid out. So students who were who did submit their application with all the information that we asked for. The students who did follow the directions and submitted the information that was requested as part of the application. That was very important to us as well, because the ability to be able to, take in that information, follow those directions, and submit all the credentials, in a timely manner and in the manner in which they were asked for was very important as well.
And as far as process goes with recommendation letters too, just to kind of bounce off of what Karen just said, if you plan to ask a professor to write a letter of recommendation for you, please don't put their name into CSDCAS before you've actually asked them. Because that's one thing that will also kind of make you stand out as, not following the process, is if we get an email from CSDCAS asking for a letter, but that student hasn't actually come to us or emailed us to ask if we would be willing to write a letter. So make sure you follow that process as well.
Great, thank you everyone. So now I know that there have been a few questions in the audience about possibly finding scholarships for graduate school. And we're just wondering if anyone has any personal experience about where would be the best place to look for any grants or scholarships for students maybe starting graduate programs the following year, or maybe students who are currently in graduate programs looking for those for second years maybe.
It would be,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, great to reach out to the financial offices of the universities you're applying to and to see what sorts of opportunities and scholarships, stipends, graduate assistantships, et cetera, would be available from that program. So that's probably the best bet. There are, national scholarships certainly, but those are few and far between and very competitive.
These aren't scholarships, but within the CSDCAS application, CAPCID does offer fee waivers. So even though that's a much smaller part of this process, I think it's important. So when you're applying through CSDCAS, inside the application, there's a section on that. So please, everybody take a look, see if you're eligible for a fee waiver within CSDCAS.
And also look for graduate assistantships and, at the universities that you're looking at. Do your research on the university and whether they have assistantships that you could apply for, or be kind of get the decision on that before you have to make a commitment to the school. Some universities will let you know if you've got a graduate assistantship before you have to make that commitment. So that might be something to look into also.
Thank you, everyone. And yes, actually, I'm very happy that we added in graduate assistantships and the fee waivers for CSDCAS applications, because I should have phrased that instead of just scholarships, but ways to possibly save money during the application process, because those are very significant ways if you look into them. There are lots of ways to save money other than scholarships. So thank you. Oh, also the one of the comments I'm getting also is another possible scholarship to apply for is the National NSSLHA Scholarship and the Graduate Scholarship through the Ash Foundation. So that is just something else to think about.
Sal, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry, that was hand slipped. Sorry. And I am seeing that we're at 8:58 now. So I would like to thank everyone and our panelists, our amazing panelists, for sharing their experiences and their expertise with us. There were a lot of that was a wide range of topics that were covered. And personally, as someone who applied for graduate school a year ago, I can tell you that if I had had this talk in front of me when I was going through it, it would have helped me immensely. So once again, thank you all so much for giving your time and your expertise. So at this time, I would like to ask any of our panelists who are comfortable doing so to share their contact information in the chat. If you have further questions for a particular panelist, you can reach out to them using the info that they provide. Please keep in mind that they have busy schedules, so they may not be able to respond to your questions right away. We're also about to share in the chat a special link to the NSLA blog, which will allow you all the posts that we have related to the grad school application process. Finally, we'll be posting a recap of this event within the next few days on our blog. While we may not be able to get answers for everyone for every single one of the questions, there were a lot. We will see if we can get answers for some more of the unanswered questions from the chat into the blog post. So on behalf of National NSLA, we would like to thank our student and professional panelists for offering their time and expertise, like I said before. We would also like to thank the sponsor, the University of St. Augustine for Health Sciences, for their support of this event. This has been a wonderful discussion, and it's only with the help of our dedicated members that the CSD community continues to thrive. This conversation has been recorded and will be posted on National NSLA's social media accounts. We would also like to encourage you to attend our second ever National NSLA Speed Networking event on October 20th, and the next event in our Raw Conversation series on November 4th. Thank you all for joining us.